So just quickly going through the agenda, parameters overview. Parameters is an effective way to add interactivity within your QuickSight dashboards. So we're going to go through what parameters are. Going to jump into a demo, how to use QuickSight parameter in different ways. Essentially, you're going to use QuickSight parameter to make a control parameter, to make filters, and also add some interactivity using URL control and URL actions and things like that. And then we'll also have some resources for you so that you can go ahead if you want to learn more about parameters or if you want to ask questions in community page. So I'll also include those resources. And as Mia said, towards the end, we will set aside some time for any questions that you might have. I would be happy to answer those. So what are parameters? So parameters are named variables within Amazon QuickSight that can transfer a value for use by an action or an object. And like any other variable in any other languages, parameters can hold one of the data types here in QuickSight, which is string, number, integer, or date time. Compared to any other variable, can have a single value or multiple value for any type of parameters except for the date time parameters. So date time parameters can hold only a single value. But if you're defining a parameter of string type or number or integer, they can hold multiple values. Multi-value parameters also do not support dynamic default values. So we're going to talk about dynamic default values a little bit later, but just to make sure that multi-value parameters are not don't support dynamic default values. Parameters adds interactivity for your end users very intuitively to browse through your dashboards, basically drilling down, drilling up, or going from one sheet to another sheet, from one dashboard to another dashboard, or even coming out of QuickSight into altogether your transactional system on an external search page if you want to add those kind of interactivity. Parameter control allows dashboard viewers to access parameters. So that way you can let your users to control different charts and different visuals. All can be decided by using a filter in the parameter control. You can also set up cascading control. Cascading control is an effective way to control values that can be displayed in certain filters. Using cascading control, the selection in one control filters, the options that displays in other control filters will be decided. A control can appear as a list of options, a slider, or a text entry area. So there are three options, three ways that visually a control can appear in front of your user. If you don't create a control, you can still pass a value to your parameter in the dashboard URL. So that's at the high level what our parameters are. It's a named variable that can be used to drive your interactivity. It can be filter control or action control. We do have also cascading control, an effective way to restrict values that will be chosen from a control. And there's a list of options there, slider or text entry area. Now, just by simply defining a parameter cannot serve any purpose until and unless you refer those parameters from areas within QuickSight that adds interactivity. So these areas where you can refer parameters within QuickSight are filters, actions, dashboard, or analysis URL. You can also use in the titles and description throughout your analysis. You can also use parameters in calculated field. So right now, calculated field only support single value parameters. So if you have defined any multi-value parameter, there is a restriction to use in the calculated field. If you add a control with a filter to an analysis you are publishing, the dashboard users can filter the data without creating their own filter. Using controls and custom actions, you can let your dashboard users to set values for the URL actions. And using a calculation, you can transform the data that is shown in an analysis. Calculated fields cannot be used as a dynamic default. So what is parameter control? Parameter control is very popular and very extensively used feature by our customers and users who are effectively using parameters to restrict the use of your filter. So providing a control allows user to choose a value to use in a predefined filter or URL action. If you're a dashboard user, then you can use controls to apply filtering across all the visuals in a data set on a dashboard. And that you can do without having to create the filters themselves. Multi-select list control are also compatible with your analysis URLs, dashboard URLs, custom actions, and custom filters. The filter must be either equal or not equal to the values provided. No other comparisons are supported. You can limit the values displayed in the control, so they only show values that are valid for what is selected in other controls, and this is called our cascading control. All right, so let's jump onto our demo. So let me stop sharing for a moment. All right, so this is a dashboard that I have created using data from Formula One racing data in the historical, races and wins, which basically have data around different circuits where the races has been conducted, the years, the constructor who has participated in those races, and different drivers. So now I have created a dashboard where I have a couple of controls here. One is the country of the circuit and the name of the circuit. So these are the controls where users can select value, like the country, they can select the country name. From that country, all the circuits within the country name, they could select those values. And depending on the selection, the chart or the tables that I have here within the dashboard will display appropriate and proper value. For example, I have a country of circuit Monaco selected, and all the circuits within Monaco is already default selected. So I have this table showing the youngest driver to win in circuits in Monaco. So basically, the circuit name, which is a parameter, is passed into this table title, right? And similarly, I have other three tables: oldest driver to win circuits in Monaco, drivers with most wins in circuits in Monaco, drivers with most wins in circuits in Monaco than any other circuit. So these all four charts or four tables within my sheet within these QuickSight dashboard, I'm controlling using these two parameters. Now these two parameters have already been set, so I can't show you right now how are they set, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another sheet control or parameter control similarly the way that these controls has been created, and I will also navigate through these charts, right? The other thing that I want to point out is control defaults. So as you can see, if I refresh the screen, so if I refresh the screen, we can still see that the country of circuit is populated with Monaco. So this is my static default that I have set for my parameter control. And the same is for circuit name. This is the static default. But we do also have dynamic default option, which I'm gonna talk about if we have time. But this is the static default. So let's add another parameter control within my dashboard that I can make use of constructor, like which constructor that I want to select. So the creation of control can be done from, creation of the parameter can be done from the parameter box here. So I do already see the circuit country, circuit name parameter already defined. So I will create a parameter called constructor param. So this is a string type. I can define a static default value. Let's define a static default value here, which I'm setting it as Ferrari. Then once I create it, I do have different options, whether it's a filter type or control or calculated field or custom action. So I will use that as parameter control. So I'll select control here, and there'll be a display name. So I will display it as constructor name, and this will be actually a drop down. Okay. Again, here in the drop down, you can specify very default values, static default values. You can specify multiple static default values on single line, but I'm going to link these to a data set. So this data set linking is going to happen from my data set, and the field is constructor name. And that's all I have here. So as you can see, I have defined this constructor name, and default is priority, but since it is pointing to my data set, so all others are defined. So one thing here is that this control does not affect any of these charts yet. So I have to attach that to the filter for all of these visuals. So let's add a visual. As you can see, I have all these parameter and filter controls out there. So I will use this constructor name since I have added the parameter as a control. So this constructor name has already been added as a filter, but I have not attached that to the parameter. So I attach the parameter here, which is constructor param. So once I do that linking, then everything will be linked. So now I can see that default Ferrari has been selected, and then based on the Ferrari, all the charts has been adjusted. So if I change this to, let's say, Red Bull, and again, that is being respected of that control. Now, if I go change this circuit to something else, let's say change that to Austria, so I can see there is the circuit within Austria. Austria is showing up there, and again, all of these are available. So I can select all across different circuits. I can do that, or maybe I can change another one here. So for all constructors, I can show these values. So this is an effective way to use a parameter control where you want to control the values within your dashboard that user can restrict and control values displaying in their dashboard. Now, I do also have a cascading filter here, as I can show you. The country of the circuit is selected and only the circuits for that country. So how do we set up the cascading control? So let's open this cascading. So for cascading control to set up, you have you have an option here, change relevant values. When you are setting up a parameter control, then you will have this option, which is change relevant values. So I have this set up as change relevant values. When you click on the change relevant values, it will list all the parameters within your analysis, and then you can select which of those parameters you want to be driven by. So for example, I want my circuit name to be driven by country of circuit. So I have selected that. So when the user selects the country, only the circuits within that country will be populated in your parameter control. So that's the cascading control. Very effective way to restrict values only for the relevant values driven by another parameter. All right, so I'm also going to show you how you can use the URL navigation. Let's see, we have time. So yeah, so I'm also going to show you how you can use URL navigation. So for that, let me create another parameter here. And this is also going to be constructor. Let me name it differently so that we don't confuse. And we can give a different default value here. Now this is going to be my custom action since I'm going to use URL. So it's a custom action. So as soon as I selected the custom action, it takes me to the action screen. Now I can define a custom action here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to define a custom action with using selection so that user selects on specific row that will take them to my constructor tab, which is a different sheet altogether. All right. So let's define the custom action here driven by the parameter, and I can name these parameters as, let's say, go to the constructor name. Okay, so let me just select this one. And I will set it as a menu option. And in order to navigate or in order to use URL action, we have to change the action type to URL action. Now, this is where the URL is where you can specify the URL and also specify the value of the parameter. So I will just copy this for now because if I go back to my constructor URL, this thing is going to be lost. So the way that you can assign the parameter value is by assigning the URL, and then you have to use an hash symbol and then the p dot. Then you are going to use the name of the exact parameter. So my parameter here that I'm going to use is constructor name. So this is my parameter name, and this is the syntax that you have to use to pass the parameter, and where this value is going to be populated from. Since this value is going to populate from the constructor name field, so I'm going to just assign that constructor name field here. All right. So, and this is going to be the same browser tab, and just save it, and I can see this is going to work. But before I actually play with that, I need to also grab the constructor tab dashboard ID. So let's grab that, and let me just adjust this. So I change this thing. So now this is pointing to my constructor sheet. So I save it. Now if I click on here, I can see the constructor name McLaren. I can go back there. So it's been selected. Well, it has been navigating away from circuit to constructor, but it's not filtering my constructor name. So in order to have that, in order to filter that value, I need to add a filter here. So I do see there's a constructor name filter already out there, but I will just use the parameter, which is constructor name param. So now I can see the McLaren has been selected, and it already got populated from my constructor name param, which is driving from my circuit. So you can change this thing to just show so now Renault, and I can go to Renault. So it is coming to Renault, and it is showing only the Renault specific constructor detail. All right, I think I have covered everything that I wanted to cover, and the other thing that I would probably show is like dynamic, not dynamic. I wanted to show the title and subtitle. You can also use the parameters in title and subtitle. For example, here I want to show this title: youngest drivers to win in circuits, but circuits in the selection of the parameter control that user selected from the country of circuit. So I can come here and I can refer to my parameter, and you can see all the parameters that are available within this analysis. And I can just specify the circuit country parameter here. I could also add anything else. essentially you get the point. So I can add, other parameters here as well. And based on the parameter value that we're selecting here, it's going to show up in your charts. Okay, so all right, so that's all I had.